Today I am joined by Brent Tonisson, an absolutely accomplished player, and more recently you'll know him for his win with Gardevoir EX at the recent Monterrey Regionals. Brent is a stipend-chasing, traveling god in the Pokemon TCG competitive community. What's up, Brent? How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Just coming off of that first place in Monterrey. And when is your next event that you're planning for?
I'm playing in Milwaukee next weekend.
Awesome. So you're staying in the States for a bit, uh, going to Milwaukee next. And for
Yeah,
those who don't know, where are you from?
I'm from Sydney, Australia.
So you are a long ways from home right now.
Um, yeah, but it's kind of close relative to where I spend a lot of the time anyway.
Yeah, so you are used to traveling at this point. So today, Brent and I are going to discuss Gardevoir, and not just the deck, but also why Brent decided to play Gardevoir to both Atlanta and Monterrey, and then moving forward, what we think about Gardevoir, and also some stuff about just deck selection in general. So, Brent, my first question for you is, you played Guardy to both Atlanta and Monterrey. So my first question about that is, when did you start testing this format, and how long before Atlanta Regionals did you actually decide to play Gardevoir?
Yeah, so I think people will probably be surprised, but I didn't formally start testing the format until after Brisbane. So basically, the just under the 2 week mark before Atlanta.
Hmm.
Like I had done lessons in coaching and basically had a bit of experience in the format, but I hadn't done my own prep, which is very different to coaching, where my own prep is basically trying to figure out what deck I'm trying to play and not as much trying to teach other people how to play matchups in their decks, and that doesn't necessarily overlap. So it's a separate thing that I have to do. Like even within those, like before those 2 weeks though, like I did already like have deck ideas and things I was gonna try. I just like hadn't gotten around to it yet. But then seeing things like Gardevoir doing really well at the Champions League as well, like really gave me confidence in my Gardevoir deck. Since I had my Gardevoir deck built like only a little bit before then.
Hmm.
But yeah, seeing it do really well at the Champions League made me feel like, yeah, Gardevoir's probably going to be a really good play. And so I locked it in, a couple days before the event, like maybe 5, 6 days. And yeah, from there, I kind of just tried on, just trying to fix the list, and then I sent it to Atlanta.
Cool. So, why did you pick Guardy, specifically? Were there other decks that you also liked? Did it have to do with understanding that Dragapult was the best deck and Gardevoir was one of the only functional decks that gave it a hard time?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things. The other thing was, if I wasn't gonna play Gardevoir, I felt like I was definitely gonna be playing Dragapult. But with Dragapult, then I would have to do a lot more work because I felt like I would have to do a lot more to figure out the deck list in the end. Like I felt like I got pretty close with Gardevoir, even on my even on my first attempt of the deck. Like I felt like I was pretty close to whatever was doing well in Japan. I'm like, yeah, I think
Mhm.
I'm on the right track.
Right.
I was playing Dragapult. I feel like it was a lot harder to do things. Like you look at things like even Hedrig's list is quite different to what exactly was doing well in Japan. And I feel like there was just a lot more work I would have to do with Dragapult to get something. And honestly, I didn't really put enough time in, I would say.
Hmm.
So having something like Gardevoir, which kind of built itself a lot easier, and it was also proving to be very strong, it was definitely going to be something that was good. And like not only that, it was kind of like underplayed, so I felt like people were probably going to be unprepared into it. And I was seeing online like people were saying Gardevoir's not good, don't even show up if you're playing Gardevoir. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like looking at this deck, I'm like, this deck functions fine. It still gets Gardevoir, it still slams monkeys. That was enough to beat decks before, and it's still enough to beat decks. So I don't really see why we're not playing Gardevoir still. Um,
Yeah, I
so
remember seeing those
yeah.
tweets and thinking like, "Oh man, you're gonna be deleting this in a couple days." So, going into Atlanta, did you think Guardy was the most poised to win the event, or like you said, you hadn't worked enough with Dragapult, so you thought it was your best chance to win the event?
Well, I definitely thought it was my best chance to win the event. However, I thought that Gardevoir was like definitely going to be the best play for the event, and if someone was good at Gardevoir and had a good list, I thought that was definitely a very good chance that someone could win, even if it wasn't me. Uh, like I did feel like going in like I could win the event. The only problem was I felt like my gameplay would hold me back just because I wasn't prepared enough going into Atlanta. Um, and yeah, so even though I didn't win, it wasn't really a surprise to see someone like Henry Chow win with a good Gardevoir deck.
And we should also note, so you and Matthew Burris played the same 60 to Atlanta, and Matthew Burris finished 26th, and you finished 90th. And
Yeah.
was your last match the mirror versus Matthew?
Yes.
Okay.
We hit and the winning in for cash, we paired each other.
Yeah, that's awful. So you guys could have both kind of top 32'd if the pairings just went a little differently.
Yeah, like the thing with that is I was feeling pretty confident in the last round. I was like, okay, as long as I don't make a mistake, my deck's like really good. I should be able to win this round. And I look and I'm like, this is probably the one match I don't want to hit.
So did Matthew work on the deck with you? Did he test the deck a lot as well? Or did you kind of like come up with the deck on your own and then kind of disperse it to friends?
Well, I mean, I worked on my own, but I gave it to Matthew. Like I gave it to basically, I think just two people. It was Matthew and Rahul. Although Rahul ended up playing Dragapult anyway. Yeah, basically I was staying with Matthew and Rahul, so they were the only ones that really had it. I mean, I think I gave it out to like other people that weren't at the tournament. Yeah, but out of the players there, it was just those two. I did give like many iterations to Matthew Barrister. Like I think he got like 3, maybe 4 iterations of the deck, although it wasn't really that different. But it was basically like from when I gave it to him, it was basically the slow decline of Poffin in our deck list.
Yeah.
And then eventually by the end we had 0 Poffins.
So yeah, that's an interesting choice. So from a deck building perspective, what do you think led to you having, I think, the only Gardevoir deck in day 2 probably without any Poffin in it at all? What kind of put you onto that discovery?
Yes, the thing that put me onto that was definitely the list that got, I think, second at the Champions League in Japan.
The Miyagi one, right? Was that?
Yeah, the one that was the week before Atlanta. So, yeah, I was someone I'm like, yeah, like my instant assumption was, oh, you got to play like 4 Poffin in the deck. And yeah, like what ended up happening was, like, I mean, I played a lot of games and like usually after the first one, it was just dead. But also the first one wasn't entirely relevant. Like there's definitely times where you'd be looking at your hand like, I wish there was a Poffin to get like 2 basics, because getting like a Rolls and like a Butter or a Cleffa or 2 Rolls can be really strong. However, the only times it really matters is when you go first into item lock decks and you don't have access to Artisan. Because like usually Artisan is better than Poffin, because Artisan is usually a Poffin for 3 against those decks. Because you don't actually need the basic immediately. You can kind of just go, okay, I can go 1 Rolls with Artisan, and then turn 2 I can go my baby Pokemon. Turn 3 I can go my second Rolls. And you've got a 3-turn play where you get 3 different basics, whilst also being a better out in the mid game and having high utility in the late game. So even if I felt like Poffin was good, it also would feel like maybe extra Artisans would have high value anyway. The one thing that I would give for Poffin is that it potentially running 1 is like a good idea, just because you run Secret Box specifically. If you didn't run Secret Box, I don't see why you would ever be running Poffin in the deck at the moment though. Just because you would need so many to see it in the opening hand for it to make a difference. Whereas it's not actually that likely to make that difference. And even if you see it in the opening hand, it's not guaranteed that it makes a difference. So I think the utility of Poffin is a lot less.
Almost like when we decide not to play Battle VIP passing Gardevoir at some point, or some people decided that.
Yeah. It's
You didn't
actually
really need
basically
that
the exact
much.
same. Yeah, it's actually the exact same as not running Battle VIP Pass. Um, yeah, like, and it basically does not scale in the late game at all. Like, I would say that that is a very good description of it.
So next, your losses at Atlanta. So looking at your record, you lost 4 games or 4 matches, twice versus Gardevoirs and twice versus Gholdengo. What do you think caused these losses, and did you change your strategy at all into these matchups between Atlanta and Monterrey? Now, I know that your matchups at Monterrey were also much better. Like if you could have picked your matchups at Monterrey, it's much more like what you would have picked compared to Atlanta. Um, but were you at all worried about your play into the mirror match? And then were you at all worried about Gholdengo, which has been seeming to be an increasingly better play as the weeks go on?
Yeah, so I was definitely very underprepared. This event, going into this event, I would say I hadn't even practiced all my matchups.
Going into Atlanta or going into Monterrey, or both?
Going into Atlanta,
Okay.
okay, well, I still haven't practiced all of them going to Monterrey, but I'll go into that later.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the Gardevoir mirror, yeah, I basically had no practice on the mirror. Like, I didn't even know, like, some of the lines I definitely should have.
Mhm.
I didn't know, like, how to, like, form my board correctly going into the late game. A lot of different things. Like, there are a lot of different things, like, for example, there's, like, certain key things, like, it didn't even happen, but, like, for example, if you're going ahead in the prize, you basically cannot bench Pheasantipity. Like, if you're going behind, you can, but going ahead, it's generally, like, not that good of an idea, just because it allows them to go, like, counter catch a Screen Tail. And I don't really have the ability, like, I don't really have the ability to pick up my Pheasantipity consistently and get the Monkey Dark again and continue attacking.
Right.
So if they do that, I lose the attachment to the Monkey because I have to attach to the retreat the Pheasantipity.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's
So
something that
small
I didn't know.
intricacies like that
Yeah,
in the mirror match.
yeah.
And also to note, in Atlanta, we'll get into this with the next question, I think, but in Atlanta you were playing 0 ways to pick up your Pokemon. And then
Yes.
you added a Turo going into Monterrey, which we can talk about in a second. But then also on the Gholdengo matchup, so you lost to that twice in Atlanta, and then at Monterrey you ID'd with Caleb Rogerson, I assume, round 12. That tie was an ID, and then you actually beat him in top 4 later on. So what was that matchup like in Atlanta? And then did you learn or adapt or get better with your deck for Monterrey into the matchup, or did the games just go more favorably for you?
Yeah, so the first loss was against LEF. I thought I had checkmate. He didn't get the greatest start, and I was up. I was up in prizes, so I was taking 2 every turn. He was on odd prizes. He was at 3. I was at 2. I'm like, okay, this is game.
Right.
And then he has. Yeah, but he runs Cerulege in the deck, and if he
Oh, the
runs Cerulege in the deck,
Cerulege.
yes. But the thing is, he runs Cerulege in the deck, and I have, like, based on what I've seen in these 3 games, I've seen, like, maybe 11, 12 energies.
Mhm.
So that means that the Cerulege is probably providing a different utility than hitting numbers that you can't really hit with Gholdengo.
Right.
And yeah, that utility is 1 is a cornerstone counter, and 2 is Briar. So
Yep.
so I went to 3 with a Pheasantipity on board, or I went to 2, and then he went catch a Briar, and I lost. So, like, what I could have done differently there is I could have hit for 250 on the Gholdengo, put 30 on a bench Gholdengo, and then forced Turo KO. And then if he had Turo KO, I could have gone catch a Iona or just Iona and put him back into the same position, but force him to hit boss. So I could have forced him to hit Turo double superior into boss superior over back-to-back turns. And, like, I guess the big thing is I didn't have the Iona yet, but if he went Turo, I would have had access to another Fez, and I still had an Iona in deck. I think there was at least another out. So there's a pretty decent chance I could find an Iona.
That's a very
Like,
interesting one, because I have seen Gholdengo with 1/1 Cerulege and a Briar, but I can't remember if it's after or before that. Like, if I saw it because of LDF kind of thing, I might have seen like Azul playing it or something. But so looking back at that, because this is a good learning experience for people out there watching, do you look back at that and think I should have thought about the Briar and played around it? Or is that just something that you think is so far out of left field that it's more so like, you know what, I'll give my opponent props for pulling that off and having the surprise? Like, do you blame yourself for thinking, oh, I saw the Ceruledge, I should think Briar?
Yeah, I definitely blame myself for that one, because that is just a logical conclusion for him to run that card in his deck. I think it was very clear that he was adding that card to get more utility out of it than just a cornerstone counter.
Right.
So I think the logical conclusion is that the main reason you would run it is not because it's a cornerstone counter. There are plenty of other cornerstone counters that are probably higher value, but it's probably for the Briar specifically, which is probably the highest value part of the Ceruledge in the deck.
Yeah, it was also a counter to Terapagos Bouffalante, because like the thing about it as a cornerstone counter specifically into Terapagos Bouffalante was that you knock out the cornerstone with Ceruledge and they have 0 response that can return KO the Ceruledge. Whereas there are Terapagos variants that have like the Volcanion plus swing that can knock out the Gholdengo. There's literally, I'm pretty sure, 0 return knockout potential from this on the Ceruledge from that deck too.
Yeah, that's actually something I didn't think about, because I'm guessing he I don't remember now, but he may have ran Jamming Tower as well.
Yeah, because I'm actually remembering now that I saw the 1/1 Ceruledge with Briar before Atlanta, because I hit it on ladder when I was playing Terapagos Bouffalante, and I somehow beat that deck, but there was no reason I should have.
Yeah, I think if they have something like Jamming Tower, because the way you would counterplay that is you would just throw the charm on your cornerstone and hope that they can't get to 260,
right?
And then you get damage on the board, and then you can knock it out with Terapagos. But I'm guessing with Jamming Tower, they can just delay everything, take the KO at once, and that's going to be pretty bad for you.
Yeah. And then your other game against Gholdengo at Atlanta.
Yeah, this was just a massive choke. So I set up at 6-5 in prize cards. I managed to iron away every energy except one from an Esearch Pro. But I made a bad mistake where so at 6-5, I went for the Mind Bend. Like, I didn't have a good attacking play. But with the Mind Bend, I also put the damage on one of the bench Pokemon. The idea was, okay, well, if he goes for Turo, then I can catch a KO the bench one. But the problem is that I didn't have, I was already down 2 Bravery Charms, I think. I think I had to discard one, and I had one on the board already. For my baby, my Clefairy or something.
Right, and you're
I don't know.
3.
I think that was
right.
Yeah, and I didn't have access to my other Bravery Charm on my Drifloon, and they didn't run Jamming Tower, which I wasn't entirely sure on that, but I think there were opportunities for it in the game 1 and 2, and it wasn't used. So I kind of thought that there wasn't any Jamming Tower, especially since I saw 2 Lightning, so there was at least a Lavincia. I'm not sure if I saw the Lavincia yet, but I was expecting it.
Right.
And I thought that there was a chance there was no Jamming Tower. But the problem with splitting the damage here was, okay, sure, I'm better into Turo slightly, but if they don't Turo and I don't have this charm, I don't have a play next turn.
Okay, so you're saying that you played around Turo, which is certainly a possibility. I think every Gholdengo deck's playing Turo, but it's 1 card in the deck. They don't have tutors for it. And you played yourself into a position where if they don't do that specific thing that you're playing around, then you don't have a play at all.
Yeah, and I would have definitely been favored to win the game if I didn't play around the Turo and they didn't have the Turo, which I think was the case. And even if they had the Turo, I would have been in the same position that if I drew the charm, I would have been fine. Right. So there wasn't really a reason for me to play around that, because it forced me to hit the charm anyway, where I could have waited to see they have the Turo, and then it's like, okay, well, then I need to find the charm.
Yeah.
But instead, it was like, okay, well, now I need the charm. And then I just didn't have it. So I put myself in a position I didn't need to put myself in. And I ended up losing that game. And this was at 9-2. And then I hit Matthew Burris and then lost the 60-card mirror.
Right.
So I everything kind of just fell apart. But this really just says that these tournaments, if you sometimes just one slip up like that can just completely change the course and completely like just end your tournament.
So yeah, that's really great insight. So there's kind of two things I want to say there and ask you if you kind of agree for advice. So the first one is that I would say maybe playing 10 games of that matchup, or just even conceptualizing it a little bit more could have potentially prevented that or circumvented that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's not just like concept, like, because I had conceptualized it, but it's more like you have to conceptualize it, then put in games and see. It's like, okay, well, did this work? And then go back to the drawing board if it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of tell people like there's like almost like 4 steps. Like first you want to think about the matchup, then you want to like write it down and read it back to yourself. Then you want to go out there and test it and see if it actually works in real practice, and then back to the drawing board is the 4th step.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. And then the other one is kind of, it almost sounds like you put yourself into like a crossroads, or like almost a base neutral position where no matter what my opponent does, I have to hit the nuts next turn, kind of thing. Whereas like you said, you could have taken the risk, like, well, if they have Turo, they erase all my damage, but it's not guaranteed that this deck has Turo every single turn that they want it. So if I just put it here and then they don't have Turo, I'm in a great position. So how do you decide playing those outs, and how do you decide, should I go for the play that if they do this? So let's say, like we already discussed that if you put all the damage active and they Turoed, you would have been in the same position as if you had not Turoed. How do you decide in a position where, let's say, spreading the damage would have been good if they don't Turo, but then not spreading the damage would be bad if they do Turo? How do you kind of decide that? Because it almost puts you into a position where I can go with this play and it's really strong, and then if they don't have the Turo, I'm poised to win this match. But then let's say if they do have the Turo, you're poised to lose it. Do you kind of just say, okay, if they have Turo here, I don't see a win condition and I'll end up scooping to next game? Or do you go with the safer play that puts you in a tougher position but gives you 2 different lines to win?
Yeah, usually it is like kind of a thing of percentages where you kind of just have to try to estimate. It's like, okay, well, if I play the safer route and they have what it is, it's like, how much worse off am I in the game compared to the other play? It's like, if I go for the risky route, how good is my position? Like, if the risky route is a 100% win and you think the odds they have it isn't very high, then you got to say, well, how good is the safe route at winning me the game?
Right.
Is that even better? Like, it kind of is just a probability, I guess, where you really just have to try to estimate which one you think is going to be more likely to win you the game. And I guess one of the good things is, like, there's going to be decks like Gardevoir where once you get ahead in the prize race, it's basically impossible for your opponent to get back in the game. So you have to, like, you do have to look at that and think, well, if the safe line is going to get me ahead in the prize race, I should always take the safe line.
Right.
Whereas if it's going to force something else out, like the other one, like in that situation, was basically strictly worse to do the play I did. I think there was one other play I could have done, which I could have put like 10 damage on a Gholdengo as well, but it still would have been like the same for the Turo in the long run.
Yeah, I find that you know, I coach a lot of people who are at the kind of like beginner intermediate level, and I find a mistake that happens a lot at that level. I mean, naturally we just all kind of, I feel naturally we trend towards the safe play, you know, in the heat of the moment. A lot of players tend to just trend towards the safer play. So, you know, your talk there about, well, does the safe play actually end up in me having a win condition? Does the safe play end up in me winning this more than 50% of the time, compared to the quote-unquote risky play, which can seem risky, but then sometimes those risky plays, like you said, with a little bit of further insight, a little bit further thought, it turns out that the risky play is actually the safe play in that case, where you thought it was the risky play. So next question, but between Atlanta and Monterrey, which there was only, what, a week, 2 weeks between them?
It's 1 week.
So between those 2 tournaments, you changed 1 card in your deck. You cut third counter catcher for a Turo. What was the reason for this change, and did you feel Turo was pivotal at Monterrey?
Yes, so at Atlanta, I guess, like, one of the things I was thinking about was like, okay, well, what things did I want to change with the deck? Like I guess the one card that could have made a difference was technically like Boss's Orders, or I mean, I thought Boss's Orders, but also like Turo would have done the same thing. So yeah, like in the end, like if I had a boss or a Turo, I would have been able to change things. So like the main idea with those is boss is a way to break like a two price stalemate in the mirror, I guess. Whereas Turo also kind of does that because you can Turo to get access to Screamtail again. So giving yourself the ability to rebench Screamtail is really nice, and it kind of allows you to have a worse board state throughout the game. Okay. So in the end, like Turo was tested to be like better overall. Like there were times against Pult where it would be good. Like usually I would use it to like retreat Fess or something.
Right.
But it was also better in the mirror match. So because like going into Monterrey, I was very much thinking it's like, okay, Pult still going to be the important one, and then mirror match is also going to be important now. So Turo ended up being a really good idea. Even after that, like another thing I learned is like even when Turo is like not that good, there's a lot of times when you have like secret box and there's something like you want to get a support to get rid of.
Yeah.
Turo is perfect to get rid of.
Yeah.
Just having an extra supporter to get rid of whilst also keeping my Iono and my research in deck can be really nice as well. So just having the extra supporter can be useful. But yeah, like it was mostly for those slower decks, like those Badu grind decks. Turo does help sometimes in the late game, and those are definitely the decks that I was most worried about because like my deck's like quite functional, so against decks that aren't using Badu locking, I'm usually having a pretty good time.
So one question I didn't say I was going to ask that I just kind of thought of. So one problem that kind of held me back with Guardy early in my testing was, one, what's the optimal supporter lineup? We tried, research and Arvin and Explorer's Guidance, kind of seeing what combinations would make the deck work as consistently. Of course, there was unanswered questions with refinement rotating. How do we build this deck now? TM Evo doesn't feel as good. How did you land on the supporter lineup and the 2 candies, 2 Gardevoir, and did you conceptualize this for, okay, I just need to get a Guardian play by turn 3, or were you building the deck towards, I want turn 2 Guardy as often as possible? What was kind of your focus there with the deck building?
Yes, so I definitely started with the deck using City League deck list. So anyone who's like not paying attention to that and is trying to play like new format, you definitely should be looking at City League. It's like I would check basically every week. I would be looking at a website called Pokebook.
Pokebook.
And yeah, Pokebook. Yeah, I'm not sure if you featured that on your channel before, but it's like a really good website. You can also go on Limitless now, since Limitless also has City League results.
Right.
But Pokebook, they have what they have is they have like a weekly tier list that is essentially like a bit of a meta report.
Yep.
Where it shows the percentages and it shows the decks. So every week I usually read through that, and I read through the deck list. Which I guess one thing that should be telling people is like, if you want to get better at the game, you should be reading a lot of deck lists, and not just reading it. Like when you read decks, you also want to think, what is the deck builder's intention with the deck?
Yes. And
you want to really try to figure that out, because every single time there's like whenever someone builds a deck, there's at least some kind of idea or many ideas that they're doing. And from there, I was seeing like a lot of things, like a lot of the standard things, like the 3/2/2 Gardevoir. Like generally, the stand was 3/2/2 with 3 rare candy. So that's where I started with. I had 3/2/2, 3 candy, 2 vessel. However, the thing I found was that with Cleffa, I was able to get, like, I was usually able to find my 2 candy in the matchups that I need candy, because I had like research Iono into Cleffa, into Fez. Or like if I didn't have it by then, and I had like a supporter and Fez, then I would play another supporter and then a Fez, and then by then I basically just had Candy Guardy. So I felt like if my opponent wasn't using Badu, I was going to find Candy Guardy, and if my opponent did run Badu, then I kind of didn't care about running like having that many candies.
The candy doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, I actually had a similar thing, not to cut you off, but early in building, I was like, okay, I want to try to skip Curlia, right? We don't have the good Curly anymore. So I tried going like 3-1-3 Guardy with 3 Candy, and then pretty immediately realized, oh wait, you need to evolve up through Curlias in the Badoo mirror. So we got to go with at least 2 Curlias.
Yeah, so I was basically at the same stage as well. Like I was also at the beginning, I'm like, okay, I want 1 Curlia. But looking at the Badoo meta, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely a 2 Curlia angle.
Yeah.
So see, I had that. I only had 2 Earthen Vessel originally. But Earthen Vessel was a card that was generally more useful. I like one thing that I would find in testing was like in over half my games I still had like 3 candies. Because even in the matchups where I didn't that I would use candy, I would often go like have 2 rolls and then I would get a Curly out, Clefairy or something. Then they would miss like boss on my Curly. I'm like, okay, well now my candy is like useless.
Yeah.
So it's like I would just have too many candies at the end of the game. So I'm like, okay, I probably don't need a 3rd rare candy. And that's kind of where the 3rd rare candy got cut.
And then I guess the other question is, how did you decide to go for that kind of one burst of draw that Cleffa gives you over something like End Zorark or the Dunsparce for like continuous draw throughout the game?
Yeah, so this was also from City Leagues. A lot of, like, well, not a lot, like, half of them were running Cleffa. Like, a lot of them ran 2 Badoo and 1 Cleffa.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing, and I'm like, okay, well, like, having 2 Badoo is nice, but there's not actually that many games that I'm chaining Badoos. Like, even, like, most of the time, I'm not really chaining Badoos in the matchups. If they're playing Badoo and they're killing my Badoo, I kind of just don't, like, I just don't need to go into Badoo again, or I'm, like, not that interested in going into Badoo again.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, against the decks that don't have, Badoo when they knock out my Badoo, I can kind of just chain Stretcher and get it back anyway. Like, I'll just go Fez, Stretcher for the Badoo, you know, item lock again until I get set up. So I feel like I could definitely get away with 1 Badoo. Whereas Cleffa was very important because looking at the draw engine, having 8 supporters and nothing like Luminion or Squawkabilly means that you don't see a supporter that, like, there's a lot of games where you're just not going to see a supporter in your opening hand.
Yeah.
And Cleffa is basically going to be my out as a supporter in a lot of those games.
Yeah,
And
especially
like later
without
on, I did
Radiant Greninja as well.
Yeah, like later on, I did find out that a lot of these matchups, like Gholdengo, like unless they draw really badly in the opening, I just don't need to use Badoo. And just going dump my hand, Cleffa, and draw everything is just going to be better, especially if I'm going second and they have to turn to TM Evo. Like at that point, I basically have everything I could possibly want with back-to-back Cleffa turns.
Now, would you say Gholdengo is a matchup where you're more, you're really looking for that turn 2 Guardy so you can start attacking as soon as possible?
I still don't think like turn 2 is really needed. Like usually like turn 3 is fine. Depending on like how quickly they attack, like it could be different. But generally, the game's quite close if you start attacking when there are 4 prize cards, and you should be in a good position if you start attacking when there are 5. And even if you get a turn 3 guard, you're still sometimes playing when there are 5 because a lot of the time they still need a team Evo on 2.
Right, if you went second, especially, yeah. So your only loss at Monterrey, you lost 1 match at Monterrey. I think you finished 13-1-2. 13-1-2.
Yeah.
So your only loss was against the 10th place Roaring Moon to Dunsparce deck, which is back apparently, and they played the neutralization zone. Is that matchup winnable for Guardy? Did it catch you by surprise? And also, is Roaring Moon to Dunsparce a quote real deck?
Yes, it definitely caught me by surprise. And when I saw that deck, I'm like, oh, we're in for a fun time this game. But like, it was crazy. Like, I saw, I'm like, okay, there's Roaring Moon, there's Dunsparce. Turns I'm like, okay, there's 3 Dunsparce on the board already. I'm like, this does not look very good for me. He went first, and then 3 Dunsparce on the board on turn 2. I'm like, oh, this is bad.
Oh man.
Yeah, so game 1, funnily enough, I actually did end up being in a favorable position because for him to dig for the boss, like, he needed to get back-to-back boss, I think, because I think I was like staying even the prize race, but because the fan wrote him, I was like, I'm able to get 1 more later on. So I think like he needs to hit back-to-back boss or something. Although I kind of misplayed this because like what I did was I actually killed the Fanrom and gave him a counter catcher out where I should have like delayed it, but he did end up having to use boss that turn, which he only ran one counter catcher, so I didn't get punished for this. But then it came down to him hitting the second boss, but he only had one Dunsparce off that Iono, and he managed to hit it. So he was actually unfavored to win game 1 and got lucky to win game 1, which was very surprising after turn 2 triple Dunsparce. An attack. I'm like, well, I didn't think that was going to be the position that I was playing in.
Right.
But yeah, I ended up losing the game. I'm like, okay, well, this sucks because I'm probably gonna lose the set now because I know that was probably my best chance to win a game and definitely my best chance if I wanted to win the set. Game 2 though, I just threw. So like, what ended up happening was I had one energy in the discard. I need to get the 20 damage. Because one of the plays that Gardevoir often does against Ancient Box, this is not something that's that common anymore because Ancient Box hasn't really been that common of a deck. Is
right.
You can do things like damage a Roaring Moon and then wipe out all the Roaring Moons at once plus Iono. However, with the Dunsparces, it's a lot worse of a game plan. Although this was my game plan in game 2. I guess there's one other thing that I should say first is I was very conscious of Monkey Dory the entire time. Although, like, I kind of by game 2, like, I got into a bad enough position pretty quickly in game 2 that I'm like, they don't run Monkey. Because if they do, we're not playing the game.
Okay.
So yeah, just putting that aside, like, I'm basically assuming, okay, they don't run Monkey. I'm setting up for the KO on both moons. I'm going to Iono, and here I need to hope that they need to pop as many Dunsparce as possible when they do this, so that my second Iono sticks.
Right.
And yeah, so I promote the Ralt with one energy in the discard. I'm like, yeah, I can retreat it. I get the Dark energy. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'll put on the Monkey. I'll Candy Guardy everything, and I'm like, wait, I don't have a way to retreat my Gardevoir. I did not find it from the Iono. I did not find the way to retreat the Gardevoir. So I just immediately lost the game, where I only needed the 20 damage that turn, but I wanted to get the extra 20 on the Gardevoir to stockpile extra damage on my board, which is why I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just send out the rolls and get the extra 20. Although, obviously, I should have checked the discard, looked at my hand, and been like, okay, well, am I getting the Psychic in the discard? Maybe not. And then promote a Monkey Dory instead, because the extra 20 damage from the Dory was enough for the immediate turn to get what I needed.
Right.
So that was a massive mistake. I ended up losing that game. I was probably unfavored to win just because I think the match was bad. But, I mean, game 1 looked pretty bad, and I ended up making back into a decent position. So I'm not entirely sure whether it was actually that bad for me.
And then, do you think this is a real deck moving forward? Is this something that... obviously, nobody should be teching for this deck. Like, even if it got a little more popular, it's still going to be way under 10%. But do you think it's a real functional deck since it got 10th place? Or do you think that it was just a deck in the field that got lucky, ran hot, and it got to 10th?
Okay, well, I actually do think people will tech for it. But, like, the tech is basically, I think there will be a return of at least a stadium in Dragapult. So that's technically a tech for it. Although it's not really specific for this deck. It's more so, I think people are going to have a natural fear towards neutralization zone in decks like Dragapult and start teching for neutralization zones specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I find that early in format changes, like we just had our rotation, people forget about counter stadiums and stuff like that. Like Jamming Tower was very underplayed for the first couple weeks of the format, and I think Jamming Tower is a pretty strong card, especially as more people experiment with more tools. You know, like we're seeing Rigid Band and Blissey. We're seeing the stadiums that we need to bump. We're seeing the Joltik deck that has a lot of tools that it makes use of. Gardevoir is very good, and Gardevoir is weak to Jamming Tower. So I think counter stadiums in general, but also Jamming Tower is something that maybe our format was a little vanilla to start out with, and now we're getting some of that tech in there.
Yeah, I definitely think Jamming Tower is the premium stadium. Like, it's definitely Jamming Tower and Artisan.
Mm-hmm.
However, if your deck isn't really an Artisan deck, then you've kind of got this problem where if you're a tool deck and you don't really need an Artisan, you're like, okay, well, what stadium am I running?
Right, yeah.
I think that's definitely where a lot of people are struggling with, where they're like, I don't really want to run stadiums because they're not exactly the greatest card in my deck. But now, people like after seeing the neutralization zone, people are like, okay, let's panic, let's find like something, let's find the artisan or whatever. Maybe you'll see something like Town Store as well.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. But in turn, you know, there's also like the how far do you spin the wheel, right? Like, well, neutralization zone has been cited, so people will play stadiums. So maybe people won't play neutralization zone, so then I don't have to play stadiums. You know,
Yeah.
it really just matters spinning the wheel and landing on the right spot where the meta landed. But I mean, for like day one meta, there's really no calling because people can do whatever. Random stuff happens in day one meta. It's more so for, I think, day two meta, like prepping to see like what will make it through the day one field, and then what are other people of my caliber or people who chose to play the right deck, what are they playing, and then how do I need to tech against that.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's only Dragapult that really has this question, and most decks can't really fit neutralization zone, so like it's probably not that big of an impact. But I will say that the neutralization zone here, that being the ace spec, that kind of helped a lot with Andrew Hedrick actually doing really well, and his group without a stadium is probably what made this deck do really well. Because I don't think that matchup's very good if they have the stadium.
Yeah.
You can kind of hold the stadium, and if they have it at the right time and they just get rid of your neutralization zone, you're probably going to end up losing the game.
Yeah,
because historically, straight Roaring Moon decks have not been good into Dragapult. So I'm not sure the deck's going to really come back and really keep a spot in the metagame. I think with the with people probably going back to at least one stadium in Dragapult, I think that's probably going to spell the end of the deck, or at least from the top tables.
All right, and my last question for you is about this format and the next. Do you plan to stick to Gardevoir for the rest of this format? And have you thought about the deck for NAIC format yet?
Yes, there's a very good chance I'm sticking to it because I haven't started on other ideas yet, and my regionals is in a week, so I haven't started anything else, and there's a week left. There's a very good chance I'm still playing Gardevoir. I might lock in, spend like 2-3 days on something, although I can get busy as well, so I might not necessarily have those 2-3 days. Outside of that, for like NAIC though, I haven't really thought about it much, but I have been looking at like Pokébook like as usual, and I haven't really seen that much that really shapes the metagame to not be to not really think that in the West we're just not going to see like a large amount of Dengo, Gardevoir, Pult, and like Raging Bolt again. So, I feel like we're just going to see this format round 2.
Right.
And I think that's mostly because I just don't have that much confidence in the Rocket engine. I'm not sure, like maybe someone cracks that, but currently, in my opinion, I don't think there's that much there unless someone cracks like Porygon, because Porygon probably has the most potential, which is kind of sad, but I feel like it's not the strongest of an engine. I mean, I might be wrong. Like if I sat down and really thought about it, maybe I could figure something else out. But as it currently stands, no one's really cracked it, and I'm not entirely sure if it can be cracked.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, just hearing that you say, you're planning to stick to Guardy for the rest of this format, do you think you'd be saying that if you had, gotten comfortable with another deck the same way that you had with Guardy? Or do you typically lean towards, I'm good with this deck, I've had good tournament finishes with it, why bother changing to another deck when I could just keep getting better and perfecting this list more? Or do you see the merit in just saying, 5 days before the tournament, all right, here's the meta, what has the best spread against this, what am I going to see in top 8, let's pick the deck that, kind of like what Azul's group tends to do. They tend to spreadsheet it out and say, okay, what has the best matchup spread, and we'll go with that. Do you stay away from that, and do you tend to suggest to players trying to make their first day 2 or trying to make their first deep run to just kind of emulate what you do, learn one deck really well, perfect it, learn the matchups, and lock in on that?
Yeah, so me not switching is more of a weakness of me as a player. Like, there's definitely times where I should be switching. Like there's definitely events where I definitely should be switching. Like, I think it's San Antonio, I should have played Gardevoir. Historically, I've been quite successful with Gardevoir, and I knew that Archaldon was on the rise. And overall end up losing to an Archalon that day at that event. Like I didn't play the best, but at that event, and like I could have done things better, but I would have had a much easier time with Gardevoir. I wouldn't have had to play as well. So I think I think there's definitely times where I do need to realize, okay, it's time to move on. However, in this specific format, I still don't really see what's threatening Gardevoir that much for me to have to swap from Gardevoir. And I feel like it's very like it can be quite skill expressive, and I kind of like that. It's very difficult for people to formulate game plans against it, I would say, where it's very hard for them to see their prize map because they don't even know what I'm throwing at them the following turn. There's all kinds of things you can do as Gardevoir with the Monkey Dories, counter catches, Iono, Turo. There's just all these different things. So I think that Gardevoir is definitely a deck that I feel like is a good deck. Probably one of the best decks, if not the best deck. So I really doubt that I'm going to switch to it from it unless I feel like there's something that's going to make it not the best deck.
Cool. All right. Well, Brent, thank you for being on the channel for this talk today. Where can people find you if they're interested in content or picking your brain or getting coaching from you?
Yeah, so you can find me on x.com/wet_goose. You can find me on Metafy. I think it's like metafy.gg/@Brent Tonisson.
Yeah, there's also a search bar on Metafy, so they could just search Brent.
Yeah. And then I also have a YouTube channel that I haven't uploaded in a while, but maybe something will come out at some point. Maybe people are just gonna rush me to it, but yeah, you can find me on YouTube like at Brentimon.
Okay, cool. Well, Brent, thank you for being on the channel today. And yeah, like Brent said, you can find him at those links, which I'll put in the description. And you can find my educational content over on Metafy, including community guides and one-on-one coaching in the description down below as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.